Hey guys, this is Locke. In this video, I'm going to be comparing Evan and Rudy to talk about the strengths and differences between the two units. I've been getting a lot of questions about which one is better, and if you already have, like, say, Rudy, should you bother getting Even? And if you already have Even, should you bother getting Rudy? In short, they're actually both very, very good tanks, and I don't think you can go wrong in investing either of them. But to answer this question in more detail, I'm going to talk about both of their skills and take an in depth look at both of them. So we'll start with Even. First of all, let's get his taunt out of the way. He has two skills that taunt, his first skill here and his ultimate. And for PvE, taunt does not work on bosses. Now, this might be a bad thing in some stages because you really want the bosses to focus on him, like, for example, Pasma in Chapter 8. But in most cases, it doesn't really matter. The reason for that is because in a lot of times, the boss focuses on your tank anyway, like it attacks the unit in the front. It might switch over, you know, it might switch aggro to a different unit once in a while, but most of the time, you can get away with just using your front unit to tank. And if it does switch over to another unit, like it switches over to a healer to attack the healer or something, you just run around with the healer and just keep doing that with the healer until it switches aggro back to the tank. So you don't actually need taunt to tank for PVE. That's what I found in most of the scenarios anyway. It would help, but it doesn't work on bosses first of all, and second of all, I mean it attacks your forefront enemy anyway. But taunt is useful for, like, mobs. Again, mobs mostly attack your forefront enemy anyway, but it would work on, like, the in the story mode when you're getting to the boss. It would work on units like that. But again, they usually attack the forefront enemy anyway, so it's not that useful. What taunt does do, though, if you're able to land it on somebody, they also can't use any skills during the duration of the taunt. Um, so you might be able to use taunt as a skill to just survive, like, especially when you get to, like, very hard mode. Some of these, even normal mobs, do a ton of damage. So by using taunt to prevent them from using skills, you might actually be able to survive a little bit better. But I don't think taunt is actually a PvE skill. It's definitely a PvP skill, because when you use taunt in PvP, you will cause the enemies to attack you. You can't escape it unless they resist it or something. But assuming that taunt lands, they will attack you, and during the duration of the taunt, they can't use any skills. And your team, as long as your team is not taunted, you can attack them, and you might be able to actually wipe them out during the duration of it. This taunt lasts for 5.5 seconds, and the ultimate taunt also lasts for 5.5. And it's also worth noting that if you look at the skill gauge for the ultimate for Rudy, it's 109, whereas Evan is only 65. So Evan's ultimate is also recharges faster, and he's more likely to use it in PvP than Rudy, because the skill gauge charges a lot faster. So with that in mind, taunt is not. I don't think taunt is for PvE, but it does have very good PvP usages. So by that, I mean to say that Evan can be used in PvP. We'll get to his PvE in a minute, but in PvP he is usable. He is used as a taunting unit, basically, in PvP, to provide cover for your squishy DPS units. Like, for example, you can bring him alongside Claire, and an enemy Dellins. As he's attacking Claire, your Evan is going to taunt the Dellins, and Dellins will instead attack Evan, and during that time, Claire gets to survive. That's basically how we would use Evan in PvP. In PvE, he actually has a nifty passive that allows him to survive. Now, this passive, what it does is it decreases damage. Right now at level 12, it decreases damage by 16% and reflects the damage. The reflecting damage, I'm actually going to ignore that. Like, sure, you get a little bit more damage from it. If the boss does a lot of damage, I'm not sure if this is capped or not. So I don't use Evan too much because I already invested in Rudy. So you can let me know if it actually contributes a significant amount of damage or not. But let's ignore that part for a bit and just look at the decrease damage received. So let's take a look at this boss when I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to go into field exploration and show you this boss. It has an attack of 26,000, right? So if I look at Rudy, my Rudy, say, has, like, where is he? 1.6. Let's say he has 2K defense. Even if he gets 100% more defense from buffs, that is only going to be like say 4K defense, right? And so if the boss is an attack with 26,000, that goes down to 22,000, which is still a ridiculously high amount of attack. However, Evan is able to decrease the damage received. So the boss does like say 26,000 damage. If you reduce that by, I'm going to say 20% for the sake of simplicity. If you reduce the damage of 26,000 by 20%, that's close to 5,000. So he negates 5,200 damage just from having this skill. And you can stack this with other things that decrease damage as well. Like, for example, you can have this set of accessories, which would decrease damage again by 10%, and that would stack with this passive. So it would go from, like, say, 16 to 26%. And you can have other accessories as well. This one decreases, if you have a 3 set, by 15%. And then you also have a mastery that decreases damage by 7.5% as well. So you can stack all these different sources of decreased damage. And this is going to be permanent, which is, I'm going to get to Rudy where it's not a permanent effect, but for Evan, he permanently reduces damage with a setup like this. And I don't, like, it's, you can probably get it up to like 50% or something. So if that boss has a 26,000 attack, it now goes down to about 13,000. So it actually drastically is able to reduce the damage that the boss will do to him. And so that is, I think, how you would use him in PvE. He's a tank. He is able to self-heal to sustain himself. So you might actually be able to get a little bit of relief from your healers. But his main gimmick for me in PvE is actually this passive, which lets him reduce the damage he receives. I think that's actually very powerful. For defenses, reducing damage received is way better than defense. Because usually attack is so much higher than defense that you have to increase defense by like 400% or something for it to actually make sense. But for decreased damage, like if you have 100% damage decrease, then you will take like 1 damage, right? So decreased damage is way more powerful. So Evan has a passive that already does that for him. So this is that's how he is useful in PvE. He's able to like just reduce the damage that the enemies do to him, and he also has some attacks that help with that as well. This skill decreases the damage the enemies do. This does not stack with this passive, by the way, but the overall damage. So what this will do is the enemy's attack. Say the enemy has an attack of 5,000, and you have a defense of 2,000. So he will attack for 3,000 damage. You negate 33% of the 3,000 damage. So you basically take 2,000 damage instead of, you take 2,000 damage instead of 3,000. You are able to negate 1,000 points of damage, basically, right? So this 33 does not stack with the 16. It's 2 different calculations, but it still helps him to survive better. So that's how Evan works. In PvP, he's able to provide value by being able to taunt damage dealers. And in PvE, he has a health healing sustain, like he's able to heal himself, and he has damage mitigation because he has a passive that decreases the damage he receives, and then he has an active that gives the enemy a debuff, which also reduces the amount of damage that they will do. So that's Evan. Rudy has different mechanics. For PvP, he is very good for this skill Link, which distributes the damage that's received between him and his allies so that they're all able to survive a lot better. He also increases the block rate of him and his allies as well. I'm not exactly sure how much damage is negated if you manage to block. Maybe it's 50%, but I'm not sure. It could be like 20% or 30%. But I'm assuming it's something significant. It's not like 10% or something, But yeah, basically he's able to negate. So he's able to do 2 things at the same time. He's able to increase the block rate of everyone, increasing this availability, and then he also links the damage received by everyone for the duration. So all of them are able to survive better. And for the duration of 15 seconds, he also decreases damage by 16%. This is similar to Evan's passive, but it's a passive. It's always on. Whereas Rudy, it's only active for 15 seconds and it has a cooldown of 42 seconds. So for about 30 seconds, he will not 30, well, a little bit less, like 27 seconds. 27 seconds, he will not have that decreased damage effect. Instead, he has a defense passive, and it's not just for himself, but for all his allies. It increases defense by, say, like 14%. Um, Again, this is not huge because defense is usually so much less than attack. You need it, you need very high amounts of defense to really be able to mitigate damage. Instead, what you really want is something like this, which is just, decreased damage received. Um, but this is how Rudy works. He increases the defense of everybody. He has a skill that does decrease damage, but it's only for a limited period of time. And his ultimate also gives everybody a shield, but again for a limited period of time, for 10 seconds. Um, and that's Rudy. So Rudy is able to, like, instead of having an inherent mechanic where he reduces damage drastically, he has many different things that reduce damage for a period of time. If you're able to use them with Serena and Shay, and you're able to cycle the skills very fast, then he can continuously keep these skills up, but he might still take a lot of damage. Like, for example, this boss that I just talked about, I've fought this boss before, and he hits Rudy for 32,000 damage. Like, it doesn't matter how fast he cycles those skills, he might still get one shot, and he has gotten one shot many different times when I've tried to fight this guy. So, whereas if Evan was in a similar spot to Rudy, I think Evan might actually be able to survive because of this passive, right? This passive is always on. If Rudy gets caught with the passive not on, that's when he gets one shot. Um, so that's the difference between the two. But I still think they both have a lot of value in both PvP and PvE. I already talked about how they work in both, in the PvP scenario, how both of them provide utility, and in PvE I explained Evan is able to decrease the amount of damage he receives, whereas Rudy is able to use different buffs to keep both himself and his teammate alive for short periods of time. So you kind of have to cycle the buffs. If you're using Shay, I find that because of her ultimate reducing the cooldown of all the other ultimates, Rudy's actually able to provide a pretty high uptime of his ultimate. So if you're using Shay and Rudy, they kind of go well together because he's able to give his shield to his to the whole party and make them survive longer. But still, I mean, if you were using Evan, sure, Evan doesn't provide these buffs to the party, but he's just a good tank in himself, right? So you can just, make run, you can keep him away from everyone else. You can have everyone else in your party be rangers, and he'll be able to soak damage really well because of his passive. So I hope this kind of provides some color to what you guys think about Rudy and Evan. I think they're both fantastic units. I think, I pulled Rudy early, so I invested in Rudy. But if I had pulled Evan and I invested in Evan instead, I would run my team differently, but I still think he would have been like my core tank, and I wouldn't now invest in Rudy. I would have just continued going with Evan, and I would have just used him everywhere instead of Rudy. So I really think that you can kind of use both of them interchangeably. They are different because Rudy does provide buffs to the whole team, whereas Evan really just focuses on himself being more survivable, increasing the survivability of himself. So, and maybe that's also different styles, right? Like maybe if you want your entire team to be more bulky, maybe you want to play that style where you're playing as Rudy, or if you want to play, maybe you want to play like PvP scenarios where you want to bring like squishy DPS units, and you want Evan to taunt so that your DPS units can survive. It really depends. It depends on your style and what you want to play. But both of them, in my opinion, are like top-notch tanks. So that's what that's my review on both of them. I hope it helps you guys. If you have questions or comments, leave me a comment below, and I'll do my best to help you guys out. That's it for now, and I hope to see you in the next video. Take care, guys.